It is day 4 of the sentencing of Nikolas Cruz, the confessed Parkland shooter. I'm Janine Stanwood, along with our legal analyst, David Weinstein.
Good morning, Janine.
Thanks so much for being here today. The judge just walked into chamber, so let's take a listen to what they're talking about.
We're objecting to those witnesses in that testimony based on relevance. To be admissible in a penalty phase, the state's direct evidence must relate to one of the aggravating circumstances, and that's from Hitchcock versus State 673 7 2nd 859, and that's from Florida Supreme Court 1996. Although evidence necessary to familiarize the jury with the underlying facts of the case may also be introduced, the court may not admit evidence that simply relitigates the issue of the defendant's guilt, or evidence that fails the test of balancing probative value against the danger of unfair prejudice. Judge, one of the witnesses, Carlos Regalis, I believe will be authenticating a video from the subway, which is located at the shopping center, or in the Walmart, I'm sorry, which occurred after. Another one is for the McDonald's, which occurred after, and that is Jose de la Cruz. John Wilford was a student at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas who encountered Mr. Cruz at the McDonald's after the event. Michael Leonard was on this, I think was the initial arresting officer, and Kyle Green reported to the scene of the arrest. The arrest is not relevant to put the crime in context. None of the conduct afterwards is. It may become relevant in the state's rebuttal case, but in order to, it's not necessary to familiarize the jury with the underlying facts of the case because the crime had been complete, and it doesn't go to proving any aggravator. The CCP aggravator deals with conduct that occurs before and during the crime, not after the crime. So his conduct afterwards, although, as I said, it may become relevant to rebut mitigating circumstances set forth by the defense, it's not relevant at this time to put the crime in context or to prove any aggravating factor. So we're objecting to those witnesses.
Okay, State?
Your Honor, it is clear that the state can put the context of what occurred in front of the jury, including the arrest. He has still not gotten to a place of safety. He's leaving the school. Clearly, we can put the arrest into the context of the capture, the clothing that he is wearing, and the entire context of what occurred. Under that theory, then any statement that he made wouldn't be admissible because that's after the arrest too.
I was going to ask you, how would you distinguish that? I mean, certainly you agree that the statement is relevant.
Right, but those are his statements regarding his conduct. Judge, it isn't just whether it's a fact that occurred. It's got to be material to a fact at issue. And that he was arrested, that he was the perpetrator, those things are not at issue in this part of the trial. So, I mean, and in fact, I'm not even sure that his statement, it may not be relevant at this part, but either way, I mean, that's him directly talking about his participation in the crime. These are events that occurred after, and I don't think the state is going to try to say that all of these specific incidents are things that were planned or part of the planning of this crime because they couldn't have been anticipated. So they're not relevant to prove any material fact at issue or to put the crime in context. The crime had been completed.
To the contrary, the state does contend that all of his actions, now not every specific matter because he had to adjust as things came to him. So, for instance, he dropped his phone, but the method of going and getting in with other students that appeared very planned. How he ran right to where the students were. He fit in with them, and then he followed them and went with them to the subway and Walmart, and then as things were getting uncomfortable, he kept moving towards McDonald's. Certainly the jury is entitled to hear how he was captured, where he was captured, and put it in its proper context. The jury should not be deciding this case in a vacuum. Those facts also go to the planning which is CCP.
Judge, I don't know how the state can argue that beyond leaving the school, I mean, blending in with the students, I understand, but beyond leaving the school, he couldn't have planned where the students were going and how, who he would encounter and where he would go after. I mean, those are not things that were planned. Those are things that occurred, but they're not material facts at issue, and they don't prove the planning. The CCP goes to planning beforehand and conduct during. It does not address conduct after the fact.
Okay, anything else?
No, ma'am.
All right, I'm going to allow the state to present this testimony as part of putting the overall incident in context. Are we ready to bring in the jury?
State's ready.
Ms. Curtis, are you ready to bring in the jury?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
So the jury is coming in. The defense had some objections to some witnesses who would be speaking about what happened after the crime. The defense says that's in a penalty phase, that's not relevant.
They're saying that during a guilt phase that would be relevant to show what occurred here. They've already had their client plead guilty to what's happened here. And so their argument was it doesn't go to any of the aggravating factors. The state's response was it goes to the premeditation, his plan. And his plan not only was beforehand, but his plan is afterwards, blending into the crowd, wearing the shirt from Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, ROTC, his escape path, going and hiding at the subway. All of this, they say, goes towards premeditation.
And the point they're saying is the crime wasn't over yet.
We don't need sidebars.
Correct.
Based on this objection.
Sure.
Your Honor, before the jury comes in, just want to put on the record that we received a waiver from the defendant for the experiences of Ms. Bashawan for today, and as well as yesterday.
Okay, great. And those are filed with the clerk?
Maybe not today's yet.
No, please.
Okay, but yesterday's was, because I didn't see it.
Yesterday was. So I guess we received today what was for yesterday. So
Okay.
we have it for the last 2 days. Your Honor.
Okay, great, thank you.
But getting back to what we were just talking about before they went back to the courtroom, the judge overruled the objection. She said, no, I agree with the state. It's part of the premeditation. His plan continues until he is actually apprehended and has not escaped from the scene. So it appears that, based on what they were arguing about, we're going to hear from additional witnesses today, much like one of the last witnesses we heard from yesterday, as to how Cruz had escaped, blended in with the other students, where he went after the fact.
And the jury may be seeing video. They talked about bringing in somebody who had the video from the subway that was in that Walmart, and the subway is where he went to get something to drink after he committed the crime. So we'll see what we hear from later. Now we do expect a couple of more witnesses from the state, potentially 2 more people, 2 more students who were in the classrooms.
Right. A couple of victims have yet to testify as to what happened to them, so that may be part of what the state's presentation is for today.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The jurors are all present. Will only be seated. State, call your next witness.
Benjamin Wickander.
good morning. Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. You can be seated. Please speak into the microphone and state your full name and spell your last name.
Benjamin Wikander, Wikander.
Whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Wickander, do you go to school?
Yeah, I just graduated from Michigan.
Okay. From the University of Michigan?
Yes.
Congratulations. Where did you go to high school?
I went to Marjorie Stoneman Douglas
And when did you graduate?
in 2018.
Okay, I'd like to call your attention to Wednesday, February the 14th, 2018. Do you remember that day?
Yes.
Specifically, I'd like you to talk about your fourth period. Do you remember where you were on the fourth period?
Yes, in AP Psychology.
Okay, and who was your teacher?
Miss Rioven.
And that was in classroom what? 1213?
Yes.
Okay, so please tell us what happened in classroom 1213 during the fourth period.
So I guess about probably like 20 minutes before class ended, I don't really remember exactly, but then a bunch of loud bangs rang out in the hallway and everyone kind of ran over to the corner of the classroom, and then I don't remember exactly how long, but eventually then shots came through the window of the door in our classroom, and yeah.
And where were you when he was firing in the window of your classroom?
I was kind of over by the desk on the side, but not behind the desk, just like kind of against the wall.
Okay, and were you wounded?
Yes.
At what point did you get shot?
I'm not sure exactly. I guess I didn't really realize what was happening completely, but I knew, like I felt like I was lifting my right arm totally up like this, but then I saw that it was just like laying on the side of me, but it completely felt like I was lifting it, and that's when like I guess I realized that something was wrong, and I called out for like someone to tie something on my arm.
Okay. Do you have any problem with your arm now?
Yes.
Okay, you're maintaining your previous objection? Yes, ma'am. Okay, thank you. So noted.
Go ahead, Mr. Wickander. What kind of problem you have with your arm?
My radial nerve was damaged, and it still hasn't really grown back totally. That's why I have to wear this brace.
Okay. And you've been wearing that ever since the injury?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. Who were you next to when you were wounded? Do you remember?
Not exactly. I know Samantha Mayer was like behind me, and I'm pretty sure that Carmen was like next to me on the right.
Carmen Shentrum?
Yes.
How about Madeline Wilford? Did you see her?
Yes, she was closer to the desk, I believe.
Okay. And then what happened? The police eventually arrived?
Yeah, I don't remember exactly how long it was, but yeah, eventually the police came in and they carried me out of the building and onto a golf cart, and then like drove me over to the intersection, and then they like tied a real tourniquet on my arm and then brought me in the ambulance.
Okay. Let me show you State's Exhibit marked 4C for identification. And can you identify who that is?
Yes, that is me.
Okay, and that's when they were carrying you out?
Yes.
Okay, does this accurately and truly depict the scene on February the 14th, 2018?
Yes.
And does it show your arm?
Yes.
Okay, Your Honor, I'd like to offer 4C, please.
Just objective 403 as cumulative to S5. Thank you.
And you're maintaining your previous objection?
Yes, ma'am.
Over the defense objection states Exhibit 4C as in Charlie for identification will be received as states 87.
Yeah. I'm going to show you this State's Exhibit 87. Can you see that on the screen?
Yes.
Okay. And is that you being carried out?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, I have no further questions of this witness.
Any questions? Thank you, sir. You're excused.
Thank you.
Carlos Rugeles.
So that was Ben Wickander. He was one of the injured. He talked about being in room 1213, which was Miss Rioven's class. You can see he's still wearing a brace on his arm. And Miss Rioven, we heard from her yesterday, she used a blanket, turned it into a tourniquet for him.
And you heard him testify about that when they got him over to the ambulance, finally, they put a real tourniquet on his arm to stop the bleeding. But again, like all the others who have testified before him, he's the 16th of the 17 witnesses recounting what happened, helping the state establish the aggravating factor as to the other victims in the case who survived, and the cold calculated, the reckless disregard for human life, and the fact that this would cause death to many others, or at least two of the factors.
Good morning.
This is witness number 39.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. You can put your hand down and be seated. And sir, if you would please scoot in and speak into the microphone, and please state your full name and then spell your last name for the record.
It's Carlos Rugeles, Rugeles.
And what is your occupation, Mr. Rugeles?
It's a manager at a Subway.
Okay, and how long have you been doing that?
About 10 years ago.
And which Subway store are you working at now?
Now it's one in Dania Beach.
In Dania Beach?
Yeah.
I'd like to call your attention to February the 14th, Wednesday, February the 14th, 2018. Do you remember that day?
Yes.
And how were you employed on that day?
How was the what? Sorry.
How were you employed on that day? Where were you working on that day?
It was at the Walmart. It was at the Subway inside the Walmart.
Okay. And where is that located?
In Coral Springs.
Okay. And where in Coral Springs? It's inside of Walmart? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And where is the Walmart? Do you remember the address?
I don't remember the address.
All right. Do you know where Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School is?
Yes.
Okay. In reference to Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, where would the Walmart be?
There's Stoneman Douglas, there's an elementary school, and then there's a Walmart.
Okay. You talking about West Glades Middle School?
Yes, sorry.
Okay. And then there's the Walmart?
Yes.
What big street is near Walmart?
It's a Coral Ridge.
Coral Ridge Drive?
Yes.
Any other streets?
Is it Homburg?
Hamburg?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So it's around Hamburg and Coral Ridge Drive, right?
Yes.
Okay. And up to this point, how long, to Wednesday, February the 14th, 2018, how long had you worked at that Subway?
Would be 6 or 7 years.
Okay. And did they have a surveillance system? Did they have a surveillance system?
Yes.
When you were working there on Wednesday, February the 14th, 2018?
Yes.
How did the system work?
It would record the cameras by motion, I believe.
Okay. And did you operate the system?
Yeah.
All right. And you were familiar with the system?
Yes, somewhat.
Okay. There come a time where you viewed what happened on the afternoon of February the 14th, 2018.
Yes.
Okay. And have you reviewed that video?
Yes.
And does that video truly and accurately depict you and someone that you served at that Subway inside Walmart?
Yes.
Okay. Let me show you State's Exhibit Mark 5W for identification. And ask you, sir, can you identify that?
Yep.
And you can, does it have your initials on it?
Yes, it does. Yeah.
Okay. And you viewed this, and it's true and accurate depiction of you and the person you served?
Yes, sir.
On Wednesday, February the 14th, 2018?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Your Honor, I'd like to publish, first I'd like to introduce State's Exhibit 5W.
It depends, other than your previously stated objections, do you have any additional objections?
No, just renew that objection based on 401 Hitchcock versus State.
Okay, thank you, that's noted. Over the defense objection states 5W for identification will be received as states 88. Mr. Sachs, is this going to be published to the
Yeah,
whole
this can be
courtroom?
published to the whole court.
But should do we need to move that partition or no?
Yeah, the partition has moved.
Although,
The large screen will be on anyway.
okay, so everybody will be able to see it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is surveillance video from inside that Subway in the Walmart after the shooting happened, and we're all able to see it.
No audio, again, because this is just surveillance video. The witness testified for the foundational reasons under the evidence code to allow this video to come in. Defense objected, court overruled the objection, and so now we're going to see what happened when Cruz walked into the Subway.
This is, if you're walking into the Walmart, this Subway is to the left for those of you who know this area. The manager testifying that the cameras are motion sensor. You can see several customers inside.
Do you see you?
Is that?
Yes.
Which one's you?
The one in the green shirt and hat.
And that. Okay.
That's Cruz.
Do you remember what you were serving him?
He wanted an icy mixed. It was a cherry and a blue raspberry.
What were you just giving him then?
His change.
Receipt?
Yeah.
I'm going to show you now State's Exhibit marked 6L and ask you if you can identify that.
Yes, this is the title receipt.
Okay. And is this a blow-up of that? I'm showing you State's Exhibit 5X, and is that an accurate blow-up of that receipt?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Your Honor, I have no further questions of Mr. Rugadas.
Okay. Do you have any questions?
Oh, man.
All right, thank you, sir. You're excused.
So that was witness number
Jose
39. That was Carlos Rugalas. He was a Subway manager, and what you just watched was surveillance video from minutes after the shooting. You see Nikolas Cruz walking in. Rugalas testified that he asked for an icy, a combination of a cherry and blue raspberry mix. And you could see in that video, which was just chilling, he had on his JROTC shirt from Marjorie Stoneman Douglas that was maroon. Some other students testified that he blended in with the students after everybody was running out. You saw him also wearing what appeared to be a police department baseball hat. He orders the drink and he walks out. So that was Carlos Rugalas, called by the state, as our legal analyst David Weinstein had said, just another person to testify to the cold and calculated nature of what happened that day. Right now, this is witness number 40. Let's take a listen.
Good morning, sir. Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, it is.
Thank you, sir. You can put your hand down and be seated. And please, if you would scoot up and speak to the microphone. Speak into the microphone, state your full name, and spell your last name.
Jose de la Cruz, D as in David, ELACRUZ.
Good morning, Mr. Dela Cruz.
Good
How
morning.
are you? How are you employed, sir?
I'm sorry?
How are you employed? What do you do for a living?
I work for McDonald's.
For McDonald's? Okay. How long have you worked for McDonald's?
33 years.
And what exactly are your duties?
I'm an area supervisor. I supervise a bunch of stores.
And so I want to call your attention to Wednesday, February the 14th, 2018. Do you remember that day?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And how were you working on that day?
That day I was at the office in the Coral Spring Park, Corporate Park, and then I got a call from the McDonald's. The officers wanted to see me.
Okay. And how many McDonald's did you supervise at that time?
6.
6. All right. So which McDonald's did you respond to?
The one on 5741 Coral Ridge Drive.
Okay. And do you know where that is with reference to Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School?
Yes, sir.
Where is it in reference? How close?
A mile and a half.
Okay. So when you went there, did you do anything for the police?
We were looking at the video surveillance.
Okay. Are you familiar with the video surveillance?
Yes, sir.
The system that was set up at 4751?
5741.
5741 Coral Ridge Drive? Okay, I want to show you State's Exhibit marked 6B, Mr. De La Cruz. Here, let me take it out for you. Ask you if you can identify that flash drive.
Yes.
Okay. And have you reviewed that flash drive?
When I did it back then, yes.
Yeah. And did it accurately depict the events that occurred on February the 14th, 2018, as it existed approximately 3:01 p.m. on that day?
Correct.
Okay. And you have downloaded that surveillance system before?
Yes.
And it's always proven to be accurate and timely and date-wise?
Correct.
Okay. Your Honor, this time I'd like to offer State's Exhibit 6B.
Mr. Secor?
Just renew our objection pursuant to Rule 401 Hitchcock versus State.
Okay, your renewed objection is noted. Over the defense objection, States Exhibit 6B for identification will be received as States 89.
Thank you, Mr. De La Cruz. Your Honor, I have no further questions at this point.
Do you have any questions, defense?
No, ma'am.
Sir, you're excused. Thank you.
Thank you.
John Wilford. Thank you, sir.
So that was Jose De La Cruz. He worked for McDonald's, supervising 6 of them. He was called to the one on Coral Ridge Drive, about a mile from MSD. He testifies that police asked him to assist looking at some video from that day. This is what our legal analyst is saying. He's likely a foundational witness for then possibly us later, or at least the jury later, then seeing that video from the McDonald's. So we're going to stay tuned. Right now, I believe witness number 40 has been called.
Good morning, sir. Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. You can go ahead and be seated. Please speak into the microphone, state your full name, and then spell your last name for the record.
John Wilford, W-I-L-F-O-R-D.
Good morning, Mr. Wilford.
Morning.
Do you go to school?
I do.
Where do you go to school?
I'm a first year at FAU.
FAU?
Yes.
I'd like to call your attention, Mr. Wilford, to Wednesday, February the 14th, 2018. Do you remember that date?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And were you attending school at that time?
Yes.
What school were you attending?
Marjorie, Stoneman, Douglas.
And what year were you in?
9th grade.
Did you have any siblings that were attending Marjorie Stoneman Douglas at that time?
Yes.
Who?
My sister, Maddie.
Madeline Wilford?
Madeline Wilford, yeah.
Okay. And she was attending Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School also, right?
Yes.
Okay. So on that day, tell us what happened.
I was in my study hall class, I believe it was 4th period, sitting down, and then I remember the fire alarm going off, and we evacuated towards the west side of campus, towards the baseball fields.
Okay. And when you went there, what you were responding because of fire drill?
Correct. We were just following standard procedure, so.
Okay. So what is the standard procedure? You go out into the area?
Right. We go out to the area, we line up, they take attendance, so I didn't think much of it.
Okay. So what happened then?
I remember it wasn't long. It was like a minute or two when they took attendance, and then a police car came and told us to evacuate.
Okay. How did you evacuate?
They took us off this road towards West Glades, which took us off this dirt road, and everybody was just walking over there.
So you walked down. Would you describe the path you took when the police told you to evacuate?
It was just along the baseball fields, along like towards the side of West Glades. Most of everybody was kind of panicked and didn't know what was going on.
Okay. So when you got to West Glades, where did you go from there?
From West Glades, I then walked to Walmart with one of my friends, Alan.
So you got out to Hamburg Road and
Correct, yeah.
then turned west to Walmart?
From West Glades, I took this path towards Walmart.
Okay. So what happened when you got to Walmart?
When I got to Walmart, I was trying to get a hold of my sister. She wasn't picking up, so I tried to get a hold of my mother, and that's when I then left my friend to go meet my mother at McDonald's. That's just the point. I told her to meet at.
And did you go to McDonald's?
I did.
And that was at the McDonald's on Coral Ridge Drive?
Yes.
And describe what happened. How did you get there?
I just walked from Walmart, like underneath the sawgrass, towards McDonald's, and I told my mother I was waiting inside.
Okay. And so your mom was going to, what was she going to do?
She was going to come drive and pick me up.
So did you get McDonald's?
Yes, I got inside.
Okay, what happens when you get to McDonald's?
I sat down in a booth. I called her, I told her where I was, and she told me that she was on her way.
Okay. Then what happened?
And then Nikolas Cruz came and sat down right next to me.
All right. Did you know who he was?
No.
Ever meet him before?
Never.
Just sat down?
Just sat down next to me. I didn't think much of it because I was panicked. So I was just trying to get back home.
So what happened when you sat down?
He just sat down. I didn't think much of it. You know, he was just, I figured he was from school because of what he was wearing. But
what was he wearing?
ROTC uniform.
Okay. So what happened then?
From then, I wasn't really, I saw him sit down, so I just was telling him, like, this is so chaotic. This is crazy. All these helicopters and SWAT cars coming. Like, what do you think this could be? And I don't remember him saying much, but he was just head down, wasn't really talking to me. I don't remember much of the conversation, but I was doing most of the talking.
Okay. Did he ask you anything?
No, not until I started to leave, when my mother called me and told me that she was there.
Okay, what did he ask you?
He asked me for a ride when I was starting to leave the McDonald's to meet my mother on the other side. That's when he started talking to me.
Okay, and what did you say?
He asked me for a ride. He was pretty insistent on it, and I said no. I wasn't really thinking much of it. I was just trying to get home. My sister wasn't answering her phone. I was nervous. I was panicked. I also had a bad gut feeling about it, because I'm a nice person. I would offer somebody a ride like that, but I just wasn't thinking in the moment.
Okay. And then what happened?
Then I got in the car with my mother, and I started to drive home.
Okay.
And then I remember seeing him again on, I don't know exactly what road it was, but I saw him walking.
Okay.
But then that was pretty much it.
And when your mom picked you up and drove you off, where did you and your mom go?
Back home.
Yeah, I know, but where's your home?
Wyndham Lakes.
Wyndham Lakes?
Area, yeah.
Okay. Have you seen a video from McDonald's with you?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, I'd like to publish State's Exhibit
89.
89.
Defense?
Subject to the same objection pursuant to Rule 401 in Hitchcock versus State, please.
Okay, so noted.
So this is John Wilford. He is a student, and what we're looking at now is surveillance video from the McDonald's where he went after he was evacuated, and at some point he encounters Nikolas Cruz. So let's take a look.
Tell me when you see you.
I see me.
Where are you?
I'm just sitting in the booth.
Okay. Is that you walking in?
Yes.
John, how tall were you back then?
probably like 6'1", 6'2", maybe.
6'1"?
I don't recall. I don't remember. But
Okay. I want to show you State's Exhibit marked 6C for identification, Mr. Wilford, and ask you if you can identify that.
yes, I can.
Okay. Does it accurately and truly depict where McDonald's was and where the school was and where Wyndham Lakes is?
Yes.
All right, Your Honor, this time I'd like to offer 6C. No objection.
Okay, without objection, State's Exhibit 6C for identification will be received as States 9090.
Put this on here. Let's see. All right, does that, let me see if I can do better than I did before. Okay, I want to point out there's a thing that's going to come up where okay, you could pick a color and show us where McDonald's is.
It's
Right. And how about Marjorie Stoneman Douglas? Okay. And let's see if I get this one. Wyndham Lakes.
it's this area.
Okay, and that's where you live?
Yeah.
Okay. On this map that's been introduced, can you, I know you didn't know the road that you saw him on again, but
I didn't know the exact road, but
do you know what area you saw him on this? Can you tell?
I'm pretty sure we might have like crossed through here, and then while we were driving through, then that's when I saw him walking on the sidewalk. But it was like for a small fraction of time, so I didn't really pay attention to it.
But that's the area where you drew that arrow in the green line. That's the area you were going to go to your home, right?
Right, that I remember, yes.
Okay. If you saw that person that sat next to you in McDonald's, would you be able to identify him if you saw him again?
Yes.
You see him in the courtroom today?
Objection, Judge Rowland.
Overruled.
Yes.
Would you point him out for us?
Yeah.
The person in the blue sweater?
Yep.
Madam Reporter, with court's permission, would you like the record to reflect that Mr. Wilford has identified the defendant, Nikolas Cruz, please? Thank you. Your Honor, at this time, I have no further questions of Mr. Wilford.
Defense, any questions?
No, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. You're excused.
Thank you.
So that was John Wilford. Once again, he was a 9th grader at the time.
Officer Michael Leonard.
His sister, Madeline Wilford, who was sitting in the front row, little did he know that she was shot in classroom 1213. He's evacuated. He's waiting for his mom, trying to get in touch with her. And that is when Nikolas Cruz comes into the McDonald's, at one point engages him briefly and asks him for a ride.
And we heard some of this in the opening statement that Michael Satz made at the beginning of this trial. And again, this is an incident that goes towards premeditation, his plan. We saw him go through the subway, blend in with the crowd. Now he's at the McDonald's looking for a ride home. And the chilling part of this all is that as the two of them are having this conversation, Wilford's sister is back, one of the victims who's suffering, and we heard exactly what she still suffers from yesterday.
And it's why he wasn't able to get in touch with her. And once again, this is, I think, the third instance of this where the state asks him to identify the defendant in court. He pointed right to Nikolas Cruz. Coming up right now is witness number 42. Police officer on the scene that day.
Good afternoon, sir. Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You can go ahead and be seated. And when you're seated, please state your full name and spell your last name, please.
Michael Leonard, Leonard.
And sir, what is your occupation?
Police officer.
And whom are you employed by?
City of Coconut Creek.
How long have you been a police officer?
21 years and 9 months.
Okay, all with Coconut Creek?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'd like to call your attention to Wednesday, February the 14th, 2018. Were you working on that occasion?
Yes.
Okay, and what was your assignment at that time?
I was an administrative officer.
Okay. At Coconut Creek?
Yes.
Okay. Did you respond somewhere?
I did.
And where did you respond to?
To Marjorie Stoneman Douglas.
Okay. That's not within your jurisdiction. It's in, Marjorie Stoneman's in Parkland, right?
Yes.
But you responded as an assisting agency?
Yes.
Okay. So why did you go? What were you looking for?
We had received radio call that there had been a shooting at Marjorie Stoneman. And it was an all call, basically all agencies, if you could help out.
Okay. And were you looking for a particular description?
Yes, I was.
What were you looking for?
I was looking for a white male with burgundy shirt, jeans, and a ball cap.
Okay. And so did you, what path did you take to look for somebody like that?
I went to the command center at first. When I arrived, I had heard that the suspect may be at the McDonald's.
Okay.
So I decided, since I knew where the McDonald's was, I started to go over to that area to look for him. About the time I was getting close to the McDonald's, that officers called out that he wasn't there. So I decided to start looking further out because time had elapsed by the time I'd gotten there. So I decided to search further out on the perimeter.
Okay.
And went into a neighborhood, residential area. And,
what residential area did you go into?
It's in Coral Springs, so I'm not real familiar with the exact neighborhood. It's right off of West Wyndham Lakes.
Okay, that was the area?
Yes.
Okay, so what did you do?
I drove the streets looking for the suspect. As I traveled down the streets, I was just going through the residential area. I seemed to be getting further and further away from all the chaos that I had just left, and I decided to start going back. And that particular roadway circles back to Coral Ridge Drive, so I decided to take that all the way around. And it's about, I don't know if it's a mile and a half or so, this residential roadway. As I traveled through it, I had my in-car camera on. I decided to shut that off because it was wasting film. And just about the time I shut it off, I came around the curve and I discovered a white male fitting the description walking down the sidewalk.
Okay, and what did you do?
I pulled my police vehicle over, exited my vehicle and drew my weapon, closed the door, and as I did, he turned around and looked at me, and I began to yell commands at him.
And what happened then?
He followed all my instructions. I obviously wanted to see his hands and make sure he wasn't armed. I got him prone down on the ground. I asked him what his name was, and he told me Nikolas Cruz.
Okay. And do you see him in the courtroom today?
Objection, overruled.
I do.
Would you be good enough to point him out for us?
See over there with glasses and a mask on, with a
Blue sweater?
Blue sweater.
Okay. Madam Reporter, with the court's permission, would you please let the record reflect that Officer Leonard has identified the defendant, Nikolas Cruz. Let me show you the state's exhibit. It's been introduced in evidence, Officer Leonard. State's exhibit 90. Can you see that on your screen?
I do.
Okay. Does that help? Could you show us what path you took? Does that help you? Do you recognize that, or is it too foreign?
No, it does help.
Well, take your time. It's okay.
Okay. I left the Walmart parking.
You can use this telestrator. So you just pick a color.
Oh, okay. The McDonald's is located right about here. So I'd already left the command center, and I drove this direction. It's not picking up. It's not letting me use my finger. Oh, there we go. I drove this direction. I passed the McDonald's. I turned and went down this direction here on Wyndham. I don't see the road, but I came back this way and decided to U-turn, and I drove this path. Is there any way to move the map up? I think that was a little off now.
Oh, I messed up.
That's okay. So as I followed this roadway around, I came across the individual, and it's hard to tell with this map at this point the exact location.
Maybe I'll pull it up a little bit. Does that help any?
Yes. I believe it was right in this area. It's based on this map.
Okay. Let me show you States Exhibits 6G and 6F. I'm going to ask you, do you recognize those? Well, they help you at all?
Yes, I believe I'm in the right area. Yes, that's.
Okay, so States Exhibit 6G, does that show the point of arrest on Wyndham Lakes Boulevard?
It does.
Okay. Your Honor, I'd like to offer 6G.
Is there any objection?
No, ma'am.
States Exhibit 6G for identification will be received as States 91.
Okay, is that, let me just get rid of this. Is that good?
Yes, sir.
Okay, could you point out where it was?
Yeah. Right in this general area.
Okay. And did there come a time where you viewed a video of the arrest?
Yes.
Okay, I want to show you States Exhibit 6E. Did you recognize this?
I do. That's my initial.
Okay, and you initialed it, and this accurately and truly depicts the scene of the arrest and what happened?
Yes, it does.
Okay. All right, I'd like to offer 6E.
Subject to our previous objection based on 401 Hitchcock versus Stately.
Okay. Over the defense objection, States Exhibit 6E for identification will be received as States 92.
So we're waiting to see if we're going to see more of this video. This would be video of the actual arrest.
Is that what the video sounds like? Is the video supposed to have sound?
No.
So maybe we can just mute it?
So it appears to be a body cam that was worn by the officer.
Judge is asking for it to be turned down. You can see him running.
It's me on the right with my weapon drawn.
Okay. And I want to show you now States Exhibits marked 6I and 6H. Do those photographs truly and accurately depict you and the defendant at the scene of the arrest?
Yes, it does.
Both photographs?
Yes, they both do.
Your Honor, I'd like to offer State's Exhibits 6I and 6H.
Renew a previous objection based on Rule 401, Hitchcock versus State Police.
Okay, so noted. Over the defense objection, 6H for identification will be received as states 93, and 6I for identification will be received as states 94.
Okay, Officer Leonard, I'm going to show you now State's Exhibit marked 93. What does that show? Where are you?
I'm standing leaning over to the right.
Okay. And State's Exhibit 94.
That's me on the left of the defendant.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Officer Leonard. Your Honor, I have no further questions of Officer.
Defense?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, sir. You're excused.
Thank you.
Officer Kyle Green.
Kyle Reed.
So this is Officer Michael Leonard with the Coconut Creek Police Department. You see him walking there. He's shaking the hands of Fred Guttenberg and some of the other family members. He was the officer who took Nikolas Cruz into custody. He's not the one who physically made contact with him in some of those pictures that we've seen, but he is the one who ordered him to the ground after receiving reports of seeing a young man in a maroon shirt.
And, you know, that shows the coordinated efforts between all law enforcement there. We have to presume that the school police, the Broward Sheriff's Office, everybody who's responded, they're all funneling into one central communication system the identity of the suspected shooter, what he's wearing, clothing description, etc. We heard this officer testified that he said to be on the lookout for white male, maroon shirt, black pants with a cap on. He was able to get to the location, found him there, took part in the arrest.
And
again, all goes towards premeditation, his escape route. Now we're seeing the end of his escape.
And this officer, just some background, has received awards. He's been honored. He's been called a hero. He's rejected that term, but he said he did what he had to do that day to get this man into custody.
Don't know for sure what the sidebar is about at this point. Speculation, totally and completely. Could simply be about the fact that this officer walked over to parents of victims, shook their hand on the way out of the courtroom, defense objecting to that, showing that who these victims are, the undue effect it has on the jurors, or I could be completely wrong. We don't know because we can't hear what they're arguing about, but their request for a sidebar came up right after we saw Officer Leonard exit the courtroom. It could also be a discussion about what this next witness is going to testify about. He's another police officer who's come into the courtroom.
Well, if it does have to do with the parents, you have to imagine for them it's difficult because they're seeing people who they like and they're seeing people they don't like. And so it's hard for them to sort of contain some of their emotions and their gestures. Let's take a listen.
The jurors out of the room.
Yeah, no audio at the moment from the courtroom, so perhaps they are sending the jurors out to have another discussion. And it almost looked momentarily like lead prosecutor Michael Satz was saying something to the gallery, something to the audience. So perhaps this has something to do with containing emotions and not interacting with some of the witnesses.
Before I forget, I wanted to tell the lawyers something. We're thinking, we've tried to order a new system for these headphones, but it's quite the process. So they run on 2 different bases, 8 headphones on each base. What I'd like to try today is using just one base, and I'm probably not saying the right terminology, because we think that there won't be as much feedback and noise and issues if we just use the one set of 8, which would mean 2 sets for each side. But the alternative would be going back to the old way of doing sidebars, where we would have to come to the side by the clerk, in which really no more than 2 from each side would be able to fit, if not only one. So if there's no objection, we'd like to try that this afternoon and see if it works any better. So it would be that would mean 2 sets of headphones per 2 for the defense and 2 for the state. I'm happy to give you all time to relay what was said on the sidebars if you're worried about that, but that's what we're going to do for the remainder of the day and see if it works any better, because they're pretty much, I don't think they're not working about 95% of the time without some feedback. Okay. Is there anything else before we take our break?
Jeff, you made reference to one of the victims being shaking Mr. Leonard's hand, apparently with another member of the victim's hand that was doing it as well.
Okay, Mr. Sutz said he was going to take care of that on the break, okay? We're in recess for about 10 minutes.
Judge, take the witness back.
So it sounds like initially there was maybe an issue with the headsets, so they were working out some of those details, but then you heard right there the defense had brought up to the judge.
The tail end of what we were talking about, Janine, that, you know, they saw Officer Leonard shake hands of survivors and also victims' parents who were seated in the courtroom. They objected that that's perhaps what they were talking about during the sidebar. The other issue is just a technical issue with the sidebar and number of headsets. That's for them to figure out. And it appears that the defense may have asked for a mistrial or asked for these people to be admonished. And the judge's response was, we've talked to Mr. Satz. He's going to address that. And we saw him go up afterwards to the gallery. And so he's going to tell them, look, I understand this is difficult for you. I understand that you have to keep your emotions in check, but please do us a favor. Don't interact with the witnesses.
Because the thinking is that that could taint the jury. The jury could see that, of course.
Look, the jurors are watching everything, whether we all want to admit it or not. They are looking at the participants in the courtroom. Everybody, from what you do while a witness is testifying to what you say, body language, how you're dressed for that day. A lot goes into what jurors are seeing and what they're watching. And so the fact that this officer shook hands with parents of the victims in this case, look, that has an effect on them. I find it hard to believe that the jurors don't realize that that's what's going on and that's who these people are who are sitting in the gallery. But again, you want to protect against any appearance and do the best you can, certainly on the part of the judge, to control her courtroom and make sure that nothing outside the evidence is what influences jurors to a verdict.
So that was Officer Michael Leonard with Coconut Creek. He was witness number 42. The judge is going to take about a 10-minute break. We may hear some testimony from more law enforcement coming up. So we'll be right back as soon as court is back in session. And for those of you who are watching online, we are also following breaking news as we wait for court to resume. This is a group of migrants that we understand that have come close to shore, very close to Boca Chica Key. We believe, we are hearing that it is around 100, 150 migrants who made the dangerous voyage here. You can see there is a chopper in the air, but once we get our picture in order, you will see that there is a boat that appears to be overloaded with so many people inside. Once again, you're looking at live pictures right now of a helicopter that is circling right over Boca Chica Key, which is near Key Biscayne. You can see this chopper, and just in a few seconds, we should be seeing the images of this boat that is in the water that has so many people inside. It appears that that's one vessel in the water. You can see there are other vessels in the water right there and to the right of this. Not where these boats are, but the chopper's going to pan over, and that is the boat that we are looking at. It looks like one of those sort of makeshift freighters, sailboats, if you will. And wow, look at all of the people inside. We know that U.S. Customs and Border Protection, they are likely responding. Coast Guard as well. This is an issue that we've been following for the last few weeks, a surge of migrants coming to the United States. It's not clear where this group is coming from. We have seen lots of Cubans fleeing Cuba and coming to the Florida Keys, but this group appears to perhaps be Bahamians or Haitians, and just look at the sheer numbers of people on this boat. As you know, the weather has been extremely hot. It's hard to say how seaworthy this boat are. Nobody's wearing a life jacket for sure. What a dangerous situation for all of these people right now making this journey to the United States. This is something that we've been seeing in record numbers from Central American countries, from Haiti, from Cuba, people trying to make this dangerous journey to come to the United States. So what will happen now? Likely they will be evaluated. They will be rescued. They may perhaps be put back on a Coast Guard cutter and sent back to where they're coming from. They may need to be processed, but once again, we're following breaking news off Boca Chica Key as we wait for court to come back into session in the sentencing of Nikolas Cruz. But this is a situation that is certainly dire for all of these people on board. It appears to be more than 100, 150 people on this boat off Boca Chica Key. Likely Customs and Border Protection is on scene, as well as Coast Guard. It's not clear what, where these migrants came from, where these initial reports came from. We're working to get more information, and as soon as we do, we will let you know. But we will be continuing to monitor this situation. We do have a crew on the ground, so do look for live updates, not only here online, but also on Local 10 News starting at noon. We're going to continue to monitor this breaking news. As soon as we get more, we will let you know.
Monitor.
I'm Janine Stanwood, and if you're joining us online, this is the sentencing of Parkland shooter Nikolas Cruz. I'm being joined by David Weinstein, our legal expert. Thanks for joining us these last few days.
You're welcome, Janine.
Lots to get to. So we just heard from Michael Leonard. He was that police officer who responded, who took Nikolas Cruz into custody. You can see right now that
it looks like the jury's coming back in the room.
Yep, everybody is standing up. The jury will come back.
They had another officer who he had called. I'm not certain of his name. I believe it was Kyle Green. Not sure what it is they're going to introduce through him, whether it's going to be more pictures of the arrest, perhaps a statement that Cruz made after his arrest. We still haven't seen any of the evidence that was collected from the 1200 building, so it remains to be seen what this witness is going to provide.
That would be State's witness number 43. And you can see Nikolas Cruz standing there with his defense team. Let's take a listen.
Okay. Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. You can put your hand down and be seated. Please speak into the microphone and state your full name and spell your last name for the record.
Kyle Green, KYLEGREENE.
And your occupation, sir?
I'm a police officer with the city of Coral Springs.
How long have you been a police officer?
6 years.
Okay. I'd like to call your attention to Wednesday, February the 14th, 2018. Were you on duty?
Yes.
And did you have an occasion to respond to a certain location?
Yes.
Where did you respond to?
About Coral Ridge Drive and Wyndham Lake South.
Okay. And when you arrived there, what did you do?
Officer Leonard had already stopped the defendant, and I was, I believe, the second or third officer there responding.
Okay. Let me show you now State's Exhibit. It's already evidence. State's Exhibit 94. Can you see that okay?
Yes.
All right. Are you in that photograph?
Yes, sir.
Which one? Who are you?
On the left.
On the left? Okay. And State's Exhibit 93.
The one in the middle holding his arm.
Okay. Okay. And when you arrived there, did you take certain property from the defendant?
Yes.
Okay. Let me show you State's Exhibit for identification, which has previously been identified as a receipt and a copy of a receipt, and ask you if you can identify that, Officer Green.
Yes, sir. It's a receipt that was pulled off of him.
Okay. And where did you get that receipt from?
I have to refer to my report for that.
I'm sorry?
I have to look at the report for specifics where it came from.
Okay.
Be in the front right pocket.
Of the defendant?
Yes.
Do you see him in the courtroom today?
Yes.
Point him out for us?
Overruled.
He's sitting over there with the blue mask on and a blue sweater.
Okay. Madam Reporter, with the court's permission, would you please let the record reflect that Officer Green has identified the defendant, Nikolas Cruz? Okay. And is the photograph, the enlargement, is that an accurate depiction of the receipt?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, at this time I'd like to offer State's Exhibits. $5X and $6L.
Is there any objection?
Just to renew a previously made objection pursuant to Rule 401, Hiscott versus State.
Okay, over the defense objection, 5X will be received as states 95, and 6L will be received as states 96.
And I'd like to show you State's Exhibit marked 24D and 6J. You should open these below you and take a look at them. And see if you can identify them.
Yes, sir. This is it's a hat and a pair of glasses.
And where did you get them?
They were off of his person. He was wearing them.
Of the defendant?
Yes.
Okay. And showing you State's Exhibit. It's been introduced in evidence. 93. Can you see the hat in that photograph?
Yes, it's by Officer Leonard's feet.
Okay. Okay. That's good. Okay. At this time now, I'd like to offer State's Exhibits. Uh, 34D and 6
26?
6J.
Okay, thank you. Is there any objection?
This member just renew our objection pursuant to Rule 401, Hitchcock versus State.
Okay, over the defense objection, 24D for identification will be received as 95, and 6J will be received as states, I'm sorry, correction, 24D will be received as states 97, right, 97, and state 6J for identification will be received as states 98.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
And Officer Green, were you able to, did you obtain any money from the defendant? Would he have any money with him?
Yes.
How much money did he have with him?
If I go to the property receipts, it has the individual amounts.
Okay.
One of the items was $2.51. We had 6 pennies, 1 nickel, 1 dime, 3 quarters, 6 $50 bills, 1 $20 bill, 2 $5 bills, and 21 $1 bills.
Okay. Did you ever add up that, how much money that was?
I did not.
Okay. Run it by me again?
$2.51.
Okay.
6 cents.
Just the bills.
Just the bills. 6 $50 bills.
All right, so how much is that?
It's $300.
Okay.
$20.
Okay. So I get $322, right?
Yes.
So far? Right.
Plus $10.
Okay. So how much is that?
I didn't hear the first part.
All right, so it's $2.51. Let's go to $2, and then you have $300 and $20, right?
Yes, sir. $322, so $332.
Right.
And then plus $21 is $353.
Okay. All right, thank you. Let me show you state exhibit and evidence for identification. 6J.
Yes, sir.
Okay, is that the money that you took from Mr. Cruz?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Your Honor, offer 6K.
Is there any objection?
This member just renew a previous objection on Rule 401, Hitchcock versus State.
Okay, over the defense objection, states exhibit 6K for identification will be received as states 99.
And I have no further questions of Officer Green, Your Honor. Thank you.
Do you have any questions?
No, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. You're excused.
Thank you.
Detective Clint Williams.
So that was Coral Springs officer Kyle Green. He's the other officer that you see in some of those images when Nikolas Cruz was getting arrested. He physically made contact with him. He said that he took his hat and glasses, and also they recounted how much money that he had in his pockets.
Had a little math lesson today, somewhere over $350. Not sure what the relevance is towards the aggravating factors for that, but certainly the hat and the sunglasses and recounting his apprehension and his arrest goes again to his attempted escape, which ultimately failed. He was caught, but establishes that premeditation and then certainly shows the jury what Cruz's attitude was as he fled from the scene on that day.
This appears to be yet another witness, also law enforcement officer. So let's take a listen.
Good morning. Please remain standing to be sworn. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you, sir. You can be seated. Please state your full name and spell your last name for the record.
Clint Williams, Williams.
Thank you.
And your occupation, sir?
I'm employed with the Broward County Sheriff's Office.
And how long have you been with the Sheriff's Office?
16 years.
Okay. I'd like to call your attention to February the 14th, Wednesday, February the 14th, 2018. Were you on duty?
I was.
And did you have an occasion to go to the North District Hospital?
I did.
Okay. And did you take some photographs of some deceased?
I did.
Who did you take photographs of?
So there were two. There was Gina Montalvo and Chris Hickson.
I want to show you State's exhibit. Here, just hold it down, 5K. Recognize who that is?
I do.
Okay, who is that?
That's Gina Montalvo.
Okay, and State's exhibit 5H. Who's that?
Chris Hickson.
Okay, and that was at the North District Hospital?
North Broward Hospital, yes, sir.
Okay, where is that located?
It's in 201 East Sample Road in the city of Deerfield, just east of I-95.
Your Honor, I'd like to offer 5H and 5K. Could you please have both those?
Sure.
So this is Clint Williams with the Broward Sheriff's Office. He's talking about more physical evidence, perhaps, or more photographs. He mentioned victims Gina Montalto and Chris Hickson. So now it appears that there is a sidebar discussion. So we're waiting to hear what this is about. I don't know, David, if this is admissibility of evidence.
It's certainly going to be along the same lines of what they've had discussions about before. If he's taken photos of the victims as they were at the hospital, it goes towards both the photos the court's not going to allow us to see while they're doing this live. It also goes towards the defense's argument as to relevance, as to whether or not more than one photo is going to be cumulative. They've talked about this with a lot of the witnesses who have testified, and certainly with a lot of the pictures, and so that's what they're discussing right now. So they're going to have to review each photo, they're going to have to state their objections, the judge is going to have to decide what pictures are coming in. Again, the defense has seen these pictures before. This is not the first time they've seen them.
Right.
And they have to come in through this officer because this officer has the ability to testify about whether the images that are in those photos are the same as they were on that particular day when they were taken. He doesn't have to be the photographer, but he has to be able to say, yes, that's what the images depict and who they are. But this goes towards heinous, atrocious, and cruel, the method that he used to kill these people, the suffering these people were going through.
Again, to remind our viewers, this is not about innocence or guilt. This is to determine whether Nikolas Cruz should live or die. And in this case, as you mentioned, there are these aggravating factors that have to outweigh any mitigating circumstances. And yesterday, jurors heard testimony from students and teachers describing their injuries. And at one point, the defense said, hey, this is too much. You don't need this. He's already pleaded guilty. We're already hearing from these witnesses, and the prosecutors once again said it's necessary not only to show that there was heinous and cruel action on the part of the defendant, but to show how cruel it was, right? The idea of weight. Can you discuss that?
Sure. So there are a couple of things that evidence is considered for. First and foremost, it has to be relevant. Second, it has to be admissible. That's why we go through all of these underlying procedures to get a piece in. And then once it's in, it goes to the weight that the juror is going to give to that particular piece of evidence. And so if the judge decides it's relevant and it's admissible, then it becomes weight. And so weight's something that prosecutors and defense attorneys and plaintiffs' lawyers and defense counsel that we argue about to jurors when we're making our closing summations.
But isn't that kind of and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but isn't that kind of a subjective term? I mean, one juror could say, well, gosh, all of these photos and...
Well, that's why we talk about weight, because one side's going to emphasize how much weight it carries. The other side is going to try and minimize the amount of weight. And the defense here is saying it shouldn't carry any weight in a death penalty proceeding because they just need to establish these aggravating factors. Prosecution says we have to do that beyond a reasonable doubt. So it's a very heavy burden on us. So it should get some weight here, and it is admissible, Judge. So we should be allowed to put it in so that the jury can rely on it and they can determine whether that makes that aggravating factor one which they're going to attach a lot of weight to.
And so far, at least in this proceeding, the judge has sided with the state that these things can be allowed. So let's listen.
identification will be received as states 100, and states 5K will be received as states 101.
Thank you, Your Honor. And Detective Williams, there come a time on February the 14th, 2018, you came in contact with the defendant.
Yes.
In this case, Nikolas Cruz.
Yes.
Have you seen him in the courtroom today?
I do.
Would you be good enough to point him out for us?
Overruled.
Yes, he's seated right there wearing the blue jacket and wearing a face mask.
Okay. Madam Reporter, with the court's permission, would you please let the record reflect that Detective Williams has identified the defendant's case, Nikolas Cruz. Where did you see him?
He was in the emergency room.
Okay. And I want to show you State's exhibits. Well, do this first. The State's exhibit. Yes, you identify what this is.
Yes, I know what this is. This is a red JROTC polo shirt that I recovered from his hospital property bag.
Okay. And State's exhibit 1. P.
Yes, these are the black denim pants that I recovered from Cruz's patient property bag at the hospital.
Okay, thank you, Detective. Your Honor, I'd like to know 6O and 6P.
Is there any objection?
Just for no objection pursuant to Rule 401 and Hitchcock versus State objection.
Okay, over the defense objection, 6O, excuse me, will be received as states 102, and states P for identification will be received as states 103.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions with Detective Williams, and we have no further witness this morning.
Okay. Does the defense have any questions?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Good day, Your Honor.
So, Mr. Sess, does that conclude your witness presentation for today?
Yes.
Because we're only in session for a half day.
Right, that's what you had said yesterday.
Right, okay.
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I understood. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is a short day for you all. I'm going to remind you, please, we're going to be on recess until tomorrow morning. We are starting an hour later, so we need you here tomorrow morning at 9:30. Remember, when you are on a recess, even an overnight recess, especially an overnight recess, you may not talk about the case or permit anyone to say anything to you or in your presence about the case. If anyone attempts to say anything to you or in your presence about this case, tell the person to stop and report the matter immediately. Other than that, I hope you have a wonderful afternoon, and I will see you all tomorrow morning at 9:30.
So this was a short day today for the state. They wrapped up their witnesses for the day, ending with a couple of law enforcement officers who took Nikolas Cruz into custody. And then, of course, at the very end was Detective Clint Williams with the Broward Sheriff's Office presenting physical evidence, the clothing that Cruz was wearing. Why is that important in a sentencing case?
Well, again, it goes towards premeditation. And while there are pictures of what Cruz was wearing in the video surveillance from the 1200 building, in the subway.
Tomorrow we're going to start at 10 instead of 9. The jurors are going to be here at 9:30 to get everybody set up to start at 10. And I think that's it for today, unless I'm forgetting something that someone wants to remind me about.
At some point, and it doesn't need to be today, but we have filed a motion, sort of a motion for continuance, but a motion for some time in between, based on medical condition of one of our experts who had to withdraw. So we do need to deal with that and figure out timing so that we can have an idea. A lot of our initial witnesses are going to be coming from other places.
Okay, I have received the motion as well as the state's response, and I'm just going to rule on the pleadings. Okay. I'm working on it right now.
Your Honor, if I may.
Sure.
The state, based upon the reply filed by the defense, which contained additional information that was not contained in their initial motion for continuance, the state is going to file a supplement to their response.
I didn't realize there was a reply file. Was that recently?
Last week. It was Sunday night, I think.
I know there was a motion, and then I know there was a response by the state, but then there's a reply, and now the state's going to respond again.
Yes.
And when will you have that?
I'm going to work on it this weekend. We're in court all day tomorrow, and I will work on it this weekend and have it on to you on Monday morning.
Okay, so then I will hold off and wait to read everything, the reply and the response to the reply, and I'll have an order by next week, beginning of the week.
And then can we go sidebar real quick, please?
Well, the jury's not in here.
Can we go sidebar, please?
Okay.
So, Janine, while they're done for the day, they were talking about a motion that was filed over the weekend by the defense about one of their experts, the expert that they'd retained to speak and testify about fetal alcohol syndrome. That expert's retiring, and so they've asked for the case to be postponed for 45 days after the state rests. The state filed a reply. Defense filed a response to the reply. The state now wants to file another reply to that. The defense attorneys had asked the judge if she wanted to rule on that and address it today so they would know about scheduling their witnesses, what's going on. And so what we heard from the judge was, no, I'll wait till after the state files their reply to your response, and then I'll get you an order next week. Now they want a sidebar on something that they don't want to discuss in open court. I'm not sure what it is, how they believe that it's not something the public should be listening to. The jury's not there. As you heard the prosecutors say, why do we need to put the headphones on? Jury's not there. I'm not sure what it is. Obviously, we can't hear them. But somebody on the defense side wants to talk about something they don't want the public to hear. And so that's what we're watching.
Well, we will watch and we'll wait and see what happens with that. As far as the witnesses today who were called, once again, you and I were talking about this, the police officers.
I think we left the part about, well, why is what he's wearing relevant? Again, they're talking about premeditation, and I think that's the one that they're going to focus in on, and that's the one they did focus in on. The defense argued it wasn't relevant, that it had nothing to do with an aggravating factor. But his entire premise in putting on that outfit was to blend in, or at least that's what the prosecution's arguing, to blend in with the students who were there, and then that allowed him to escape from there. There were photos of what he was wearing. It's obvious what it is. Sometimes jurors like to be able to look at and touch and see something. Well, they're taking off the headsets. Let's see if we find out what they were talking about.
Your Honor, so the defense had filed D-302 and D-303. I believe you filed a response to that.
I did. I filed a response to the first one, Your Honor.
Which is the 302 or 303? One was motion for judicial review?
One was for the judicial review, and that was filed, I believe, last Thursday, a week ago today. And then the defense filed another motion regarding the parameters of what could be done. For example, they want duties and masks to be worn by the jurors. We have no objection to that. They do not want the jurors to go into the classrooms. We object to that. You know, the victims were killed, victims were shot in those classrooms. So we object to any restriction on jurors being able to go inside of the classroom. So there are things to be worked out regarding that motion, but as far as asking you to go there because you might get emotional at the crime scene, which is really the basis of their motion, it's not necessary, Your Honor. It's just not necessary. That should be denied.
Okay, so this was my plan. The reason I hadn't addressed it yet, I want to get more information at the meeting today. as far as the procedure and what is proposed, so that I can have a better idea of the semantics and the procedure. And then I think that a lot of these issues may resolve themselves once we figure out what exactly are the state's intentions as far as the procedure and so on and so forth.
No, and I understand that, but what I wanted to bring, and first of all, we can set D302, which is a motion for judicial review of the crime scene, for another day, because that is not the sum and substance of our motion. And you read the pleading, so we can defer on that. But 303, those are procedures for the crime scene view, and in light of the fact that that meeting that you just referenced to is imminent, I wanted to make sure that the court was familiar with what the defense was asking for.
Oh, I am. And also the chief judge had a meeting with the state attorney and the public defender together and discussed all of these things and then apprised me of what they had discussed. And so I thought we would further the discussion at the meeting, and then, but yes, I am familiar with all of the requests.
Okay, thank you.
For the meeting this afternoon, I assume the defendant is not going to be present?
We've already indicated that we'll wait because it's a procedural issue.
I agree. I didn't know that he had waived it.
Yeah, you asked me before, so we're good.
And while everyone's here, we only have until 2 o'clock for the meeting. If you all think we're going to need more than that, if everyone maybe can come at 1:15.
I don't know where the meeting is.
It's in Judge Tudor's conference room. Thank you, on the 20th floor.
And he's setting up a Zoom, so we'll be able to watch that way, so that the numbers in the room are minimal.
Okay. I wish I'm thinking it would just be easier if we could just do it right now. But I think there's people that are not present here that are going to be attending that maybe are not available right now.
I think Mr. Weeks wanted to attend. We can see if he's available, Judge.
Ozzy, what about from your end? Captain Tianga, I'm sorry.
If everybody's here, I can figure it out. But there are a couple people that are coming.
Well, let me make a quick phone call.
So this is a discussion, if you've been following along or if maybe you kind of lost place, this is a discussion about a site visit. Let's take a listen.
On my part, the media can't be there.
No, not in the meeting. I mean...
Yes, Judge, they're around close.
But they weren't closed, right?
They weren't.
So now this is a question about whether the media can be either at the meeting about this crime scene site visit and or even at the crime scene.
Right, and so what they're talking about here, Janine, is that the prosecution wants to take 22 jurors out to the 1200 building. They've talked about it before. There's a couple of pending motions filed by the defense. There's been some litigation about this. There is case law and precedent that allows for all of this to happen. And so now it appears that this afternoon they're having a meeting amongst all the parties to hammer this out. There are a lot of moving parts here. You have to transport 22 jurors from the courthouse to the crime scene. The prosecution has to be there, the defense team has to be there, the judge has to be there, and moreover, the defendant has to be here, and he's in custody. So that's why you heard the judge talking to BSO and corrections. How are they going to do it? And then, look, it's obvious to all of us that he's in custody and he's been arrested and he's not going anywhere, but we have to play this game of appearances with the jurors. That's why they have
the
black curtain on the bottom, so they can't see the leg irons. They don't see him being shackled out of the courtroom. That's why he's in there before they get there.
And there are some people, I just want to take a step back for a second, because I think not everybody realizes that the 1200 building has not been touched. And it is still a crime scene. It has been blocked off, and there is still blood. Dried blood. There is still...
Well, that's what we heard him talk about, the booties, and you know, you don't want people to walk into the room. the state objected. No, part of the whole reason we're taking everybody there is to let them go into the rooms. It's one thing to show a video. We want to take them there. You know, again, I guess the easiest way to try and explain this is we'll go to movies and comic books. If we could find a superhero who could shrink the building down and bring it into the courtroom and then shrink everybody down and walk them through the building, then that's what they would do. But we obviously can't do that, so they're trying to figure out a procedure to make this happen, because it's very important to the state and it's essential to their aggravating factors to show, again, heinous, atrocious, and cruel, cold, calculated, premeditated disregard for human life in general. It's going to have an impact to walk jurors through where this happened. But again, everybody has to be there. Nobody can talk. Because it's like when they're watching the video, and we've seen pictures of them watching the video. You watch the video, you see what's being played in front of you. Obviously, the defense would have wanted, oh, why don't you take a camera out there and just sort of film it, and then we'll show that to the jurors so they can see what's going on. No, that's not going to be as effective.
No, it's not the same as actually physically
going there. And, you know, quite frankly, for a juror who might be on the fence about aggravating factors and hasn't even heard any of the mitigating circumstances, this may be the one thing that puts them over the edge. Because we've seen it in the testimony when the students and the teachers talk about what was going on there. We can't see how emotional the jurors get, but the people who are in the courtroom can see how emotional they're getting and what they're paying attention to. And this may be what puts them over the edge and makes them say to a T, all 12 of them, yes, unanimously, you know what? All 17 victims, they've met aggravating, it outweighs whatever mitigating they've presented. And so that's why it's important to the prosecution. But the landmines are huge. And unless they figure out a way to do it, all of this effort, every day they've put into it, up to the point of that crime scene view, gets washed out because there's a mistrial there because something happened that shouldn't have influenced a juror.
That's a lot to take people to a site visit, and this just goes into what the prosecution has been doing. And as you mentioned, they started with that opening statement, so none of that can go into evidence, but it sort of paints the picture of what happened. Then you have these witnesses, you have foundational witnesses who are talking about the video and how they obtained the video, how the video was viewed. Then some of the video was being seen. Then some witnesses took jurors through what happened to them. So I think you're right. I think for these jurors to then go to the scene of the crime, to see what happened, to see the places where some of these victims lost their lives, that's got to be powerful.
And they're talking about there still being dried blood there from some of these victims. Nobody's been in there for 4 years. It's been quarantined off. It's been sealed. There's must be security that's in place. There have to be cameras monitoring. They want to make sure nobody's coming and going. You know, there is so much at play here. But
and then he wanted to make sure that Mr. Pryor also knew that we were moving it up, if he needs to be there.
I believe Mr. Pryor is aware of that, Your Honor. I'll double check that.
Do you know anything about the Zoom link for it?
No. I think David was speaking to, I'm sorry, Mr. Wheeler, because communicating this. Did you send me the
So we will stay with this unless and until...
Well, I heard the judge say, or somebody said, are we off the record? And now that the defendant's left, there's nothing that can happen that is going to influence this case other than scheduling. They can talk about a time and a location, but everything else, nothing can happen. They have waived the defendant's presence for this meeting to discuss all of this. And so he doesn't need to be there for that. But for everything else, you can't be on the record if the defendant's not in the courtroom. And I think that's why we're sealing the seal of the great state of Florida.
The seal is back up, and the meetings will be held, procedural meetings, to talk about how they're going to move all of these people to the site. And once again, this wraps up day 4 of the sentencing.
And another powerful day for the state. I mean, look, we started off the day with another victim testifying as to what happened to him, and then The state took us through the progression of, we heard some of it yesterday, the beginning part of their factual story, how he walked out, how he was behind the other students wearing his Marjorie Stoneman Douglas ROTC outfit and the hat.
And we heard from one of the students who was there. We actually saw video of him going to the subway, ordering an icy, and then leaving, and then going into the McDonald's and sort of interacting with John Wilford, who, and in just such a stunning moment, Wilford not even realizing who he was, and of course not knowing that he just shot his sister.
Right. And, we saw all that. We saw the images from that. We heard some testimony that bolstered what happened there. And then, as we expected, some of the physical crime scene evidence starts coming in. The shirt he wore, we saw the arrest take place. So again, state building their aggravating factors, giving the jury actual tangible things that they can hold on to, they can touch. They're not going to take the shirt and pants out of the plastic wrap or the hat, but you know what, ladies and gentlemen, they can wave that to the jurors. They can see it. It's here. You saw it in the picture. That's what he wore. That's what was part of his plan to escape. And then, closing that out with the other evidence that they introduced and some more pictures from today. Another good day for the state, as one would expect, as they're building their aggravating factors.
A short day, a powerful day. Our own Christina Vasquez is in the courtroom, and of course she will have updates all throughout the day on Local 10 News. And for us on local10.com and all of our social media platforms, we will be back with you tomorrow when court gets back into session. A little bit later, 10 o'clock tomorrow morning.
We'll see how long they go tomorrow, how much of their time they use, but this is the way things work. They had enough witnesses, it only was 2 hours, and tomorrow maybe they'll go a little bit later because they started a little bit late. It's a long road, and it's a marathon, and they're in it for the long run, and so this is how it's going to work for the next several weeks.
It's just week one. We will see you tomorrow at 10 a.m. And right now, while we are online and we are following our continuing coverage, not only of the Nikolas Cruz sentencing, but we are also looking at these live images right now from right off of Boca Chica Key. You can see that there is this sailboat that is just full of people. We've gotten information from the U.S. Coast Guard. From what they are telling us, it's about 150 people on this boat, reported by a Good Samaritan earlier today.